Welcome to Monk's Temple. Please, come in. Find a space to settle. Let your body find comfort, and allow the chatter of the day to soften into a distant hum. We are not here to rush. We are here to listen, to feel, to remember something ancient and true that hums within your own bones. Tonight, let my voice be a gentle guide, a companion in the quiet, as we explore the timeless question that visits every human heart. When the world grows heavy, and the light seems faint, how do we keep going? The wisdom we will share comes from the heart of Buddhism, from the compassionate insights of the Buddha, who understood suffering not as a curse, but as a path to profound awakening. Let me begin with a memory. Years ago, long before I found the stillness of the temple, I was adrift in a city of endless noise. My mind was a crowded marketplace of worry. One afternoon, feeling utterly crushed, I sought refuge in the only green space I could find, a small, forgotten cemetery, where old trees stood guard over weathered stones. I sat on a bench, my head in my hands, feeling like a failure at everything that mattered. As I sat there in my despair, my eyes focused on the base of a massive oak tree. There, in a crack between two great roots, a small wild rose bush was growing. It was not planted there. No one watered it. It had somehow taken root in that narrow, shadowed space of stone and packed earth. And it was blooming. A single, perfect, pink blossom was turned toward a sliver of sunlight that pierced the canopy. In that moment, I didn't think. I simply witnessed. Here was life, insistent and beautiful, thriving not in spite of its difficult place, but because of it. The crack gave it shelter from the wind. The roots gave it structure. Its struggle for light had given its stem a strength a garden rose would never know. It was not complaining about its location, it was using every single element of its existence to become what it was meant to be. That rose was my first true teacher in perseverance. It taught me that our difficult place is not a mistake. It is our unique terrain. And within it are hidden all the materials we need to bloom. This is the first whisper of Buddhist wisdom I offer you tonight. Your struggle is not evidence that you are off your path. It is often the very texture of the path itself. The Buddha taught that life contains dukkha, stress, unease, suffering. To resist this truth is to suffer more. But to look directly at your crack in the stone, to accept it as your starting ground, is to begin the work of enlightenment. You are not the gardener who failed to plant the rose in a better spot. You are the rose. Your job is to find the light from right where you are. If this idea, that your very challenges can be the seed of your strength, resonates with you, then you are already beginning to shift your perspective. Consider subscribing to Monk's Temple. By joining us, you choose to return to this quiet garden of understanding whenever you need. It is a simple act of tending to your own inner landscape. Now, let us leave that cemetery and travel deeper into the forest of parable, to a story about a river and two types of boats. In a lush valley, there flowed a wide, powerful river. It was the only route to a village that possessed great healing herbs. Two boatmen plied this river. The first, Arjun, had a strong, sleek, new boat. He was proud of it. He believed his strength and his perfect vessel would conquer the river. The second, Bimal, had an old, patched-up boat, worn smooth by years of travel. It was not impressive to look at. One day, a great storm gathered. The river swelled, turning into a raging torrent of churning brown water, filled with dangerous debris. Arjun, confident in his boat and his power, set out first. He rowed with all his might, muscles straining, jaw clenched, fighting against the current. He saw every log, every whirlpool, as a personal enemy to be defeated. He used his strength to push directly against the flow, to steer clear of every obstacle by force. Very quickly, he exhausted himself. A large tree trunk, carried by the flood, slammed into the side of his beautiful boat. He fought to control it, but in his fatigue, he overcorrected. The boat capsized, and he was thrown into the furious water. Bimmel prepared to leave later. He did not look at the river as an enemy. He stood on the bank for a long time, simply observing. He watched the patterns of the flow. He saw where the main current ran fastest, and where there were slightly slower eddies near the banks. He saw how the debris tended to cluster in certain channels. He did not pray for the storm to stop, he sought to understand its nature. When he finally pushed his old boat into the water, he did not row directly upstream. He first angled his boat towards the bank, entering a slower eddy. He used the river's own energy, paddling gently to move from one eddy to the next, sometimes letting the current carry him sideways to find a better route. He moved with the water, not against it. When debris approached, he didn't panic and fight it. He used a small, precise push of his or to nudge his boat just enough to let it pass. His journey was not a straight, aggressive line. It was a dance of adaptation. He reached the village tired, but safe, his boat and spirit intact. Arjun, who had been rescued downstream, was furious and ashamed. "You have a weaker boat and less strength," he shouted at Bimmel. "How did you succeed where I failed?" Bimmel said quietly, "You were trying to conquer the river. I was trying to understand it. You saw the water as something to defeat. I saw it as my partner. My strength was not in my arms, but in my attention. My boat is not weaker, it is wiser. It has learned flexibility from 1,000 such storms. This, friends, is a core principle of navigating difficult times in Buddhism. We often believe perseverance means grim, forceful resistance. We set our jaw against the storm and burn out our spirit. The Buddha taught right effort, effort that is wise, balanced, and mindful. It is the effort of Bimmel. It is not about exhausting yourself fighting the entire river. It is about using your awareness to find the eddy of peace in this very moment, to make the one skillful adjustment available to you right now. Your storm, be it grief, fear, or uncertainty, has a nature. Observe it. Don't waste your strength raging against its existence. Find the small, slow current near the bank of your breath, and begin there. Perseverance is intelligent adaptation, not blind force. This intelligence is rooted in a radical acceptance of the present. Our pain is magnified 1,000 times by our resistance to what is. We think, this shouldn't be happening to me. That thought is a second arrow. The Buddha famously taught that in life, we are sometimes struck by an arrow. That is the first arrow, the pain of the event itself. But then, we shoot ourselves with a second, third, and fourth arrow by our reaction, our rage, our resentment, our stories about how unfair it is, our terror that it will last forever. The first arrow may be unavoidable. The rest are a choice. Bimmel accepted the first arrow, the storm existed. He did not shoot the second arrow of, this storm is unfair and I must defeat it. He simply worked with the reality of the water. Let me share a personal anecdote about second arrows. In my early days at the monastery, I was tasked with tending the vegetable garden. I loved the work, but one year, a blight attacked the tomato plants. I fought it. I used every organic remedy, I fretted over each leaf, I felt personally responsible and deeply frustrated. This shouldn't be happening. I've worked so hard. I was miserable. The head monk observed my struggle for a week. Then he walked over, took a kneeling pad, and sat beside a blighted plant. "Show me the disease," he said. I pointed out the spotted leaves, the wilting stems. He nodded. "Now show me what is not diseased." Puzzled, I looked. I pointed to a single green leaf, to a small, hard, green tomato at the base. "Good," he said. "Your job is not to save the plant from the blight. Your job is to strengthen what is still healthy. Pour your care there. The blight may take the plant, or it may not. That is not in your control. But whether you strengthen the healthy part with your attention, or poison the whole experience with your frustration, that is your choice." He was teaching me to put down the quiver of second arrows. I shifted my effort from fighting the disease to supporting the life that remained. Some plants survived. Some did not. But my inner peace was no longer tied to the outcome. I had learned to tend the garden of my mind first. This is the practice. When hardship strikes, feel the first arrow. Acknowledge the pain, the fear, the loss. Then, with great compassion, ask yourself, where is the part of me that is still healthy? Where is the single green leaf? And pour your care there. That is wise perseverance. Let us continue. We were speaking of the second arrow, the one we shoot ourselves with. Now, I invite you to imagine a vast, silent desert under a blazing sun. In the middle of this desert sits an old well, so deep its bottom is lost in darkness. This is a story about thirst and the nature of seeking. A traveler, parched and desperate, stumbled to the edge of this well. He had been wandering for days, his water skin long empty. Peering down, he saw only blackness. No reflection of water, no comforting splash. In his despair, he cried out, "The well is dry. I am doomed." He collapsed at the rim, consumed by the certainty of his death. He had given up. Hours later, another traveler arrived at the same well, equally parched. He too peered into the impenetrable dark. But instead of declaring it dry, he picked up a small stone from the ground and dropped it into the void. He listened with his whole being. 1 second. 2. Then, from the profound depths, came a distant, soft plink. The sound of a stone hitting water. A smile touched his cracked lips. He found the bucket and rope lying nearby. He lowered the bucket, heard it kiss the surface far below, and drew up cool, clear water. He drank his fill and saved the first traveler as well. The Buddha taught that our senses and our immediate judgments are often unreliable. We look into the dark well of our circumstances and see only emptiness. We declare, there is no hope here. No possibility. We collapse in defeat. But wisdom asks us to drop a stone of inquiry. To listen deeply. That plink is the sound of possibility. It is the law of cause and effect, karma, in action. It says, if you take the correct action, the result will follow. The first traveler's perseverance ended at the level of his sight. The second traveler's perseverance went deeper, to the level of faith in nature's hidden laws. Your dark well, your financial struggle, your broken heart, your loneliness, may not show you the water. But have you dropped the stone? Have you performed the simple, probing action? Have you sent out a resume today, not with certainty of a reply, but as an act of inquiry? Have you spoken a kind word to yourself, just to listen for the echo of self-compassion? Perseverance is not just enduring the desert walk, it is having the presence of mind to test the depth of the well. This leads us to a profound Buddhist concept, shunyata, often translated as emptiness. It does not mean nothingness. It means that nothing exists independently, in isolation. Everything is interconnected, dependent on causes and conditions. Your dark well is not a solid, independent block of despair. It is a temporary coming together of many factors: your thoughts, your past actions, your environment, your physical state. And because it is dependent, it can be changed. You change it by introducing new causes, new conditions. You lower the bucket. The water was always there, but it required the condition of the bucket, the rope, and your effort to make it available. Your happiness is like that water. It is not absent. It is simply waiting for the right conditions to be drawn up. Let me tell you a story of a blacksmith and a bellows. In a village, there were two blacksmiths. The first was highly skilled, with strong arms and the finest tools. But he was impatient and easily discouraged. When his fire burned low, he would throw more wood on haphazardly, often smothering the embers. He would then curse the wood, the fire, and his own bad luck, and walk away in frustration. His forge was often cold, his work unfinished. The second blacksmith was older, his movements slower. His tools were simple. When his fire burned low, he did not look at the dying embers as a failure. He saw them as the essential starting point. He would carefully clear the ash, exposing the glowing heart of the coals. Then, he would take his bellows, a simple, leather device, and begin to pump. Not with frantic, giant heaves, but with a steady, rhythmic squeeze, and release. Squeeze, and release. He would focus all his attention on the base of the fire, on the point of potential. He did not pump the bellows at the dark, cold edges of the forge. He aimed the stream of air precisely at the last, fading ember. With each steady breath from the bellows, that ember would glow brighter. A tiny flame would appear. Then another. He would then add a small piece of kindling, then another, all the while maintaining that rhythmic, focused breath. Soon, a robust, healthy fire would be blazing again. The first blacksmith saw only the outcome, a dead fire. The second blacksmith understood the process. Fire depends on air and fuel. His perseverance was not in wishing for a blaze, but in the disciplined, patient action of working with the conditions. The bellows is your mindful effort. The dying ember is your remaining spark of hope, your flicker of will. You must stop throwing huge, desperate logs of expectation onto a cold hearth. Clear the ash of your discouraging thoughts. Find that one ember. It might be the simple wish to feel better. Then apply the steady, rhythmic bellows of your breath. One conscious inhalation, one exhalation. One small, kind action for yourself. Direct your air there. Nourish that single spark. It is enough. From a single, carefully tended ember, the entire forge of your spirit can be relit. This is the essence of right effort in Buddhism, consistent, patient, and precisely directed. Now, consider the fuel we add. Often, we feed our inner fire with the wet, rotten wood of comparison. Her life is better. He has more. They are happier. This wood will only smoke and choke your flame. The Buddha taught that contentment, santuthi, is the highest wealth. Let me share a parable about two trees. On a windy hillside grew two pine trees, side by side. The first tree was tall and looked longingly at the majestic, sheltered trees in the protected valley below. If only I were down there, it sighed with every gust. I would grow straighter. My branches would be fuller. My life would be easy and grand. It spent so much energy yearning for a different location that it failed to sink its roots deeply into its own rocky soil. It remained thin, always fighting the wind, always unhappy. The second tree never looked to the valley. It accepted the wind as its teacher. Instead of longing for calm, it learned to flex. It focused all its growth on driving its roots deep into every crack of the hillside, anchoring itself with a grip that was invisible but unshakable. Over decades, a remarkable thing happened. The constant wind, which the first tree cursed, actually shaped the second tree into a thing of breathtaking beauty. Its trunk was strong and sinewy, its branches swept into elegant, flowing curves by the persistent breeze. It became known across the region as the dancing pine, a unique testament to resilience. People would hike for miles to see it, to touch its storied bark. The sheltered trees in the valley were straight, uniform, and largely ignored. We are so often the first tree, believing our value lies in being somewhere else, in someone else's conditions. But your hilltop with its harsh wind is your life. Your struggles are that very wind. Buddhism asks you to stop yearning for the valley and to instead ask, how can I root myself so deeply in my present reality that the wind becomes the sculptor of my strength, the artist of my unique beauty? Your perseverance is not about reaching a windless place. It is about learning to dance with the gales, trusting that they are not your enemies, but the forces that will give your character its singular, admired form. This rooting requires us to examine the very soil of our minds. We think we are thinking our thoughts, but often, our thoughts are thinking us. They blow through like weather, and we mistake the storm for ourself. I will tell you a story about a lake and two monks. Two monks were traveling. They came to a wide, muddy lake they needed to cross. At the shore, a beautiful woman in fine silk stood, distressed. She could not cross without ruining her clothes. The older monk, without a word, picked her up, carried her across the lake, set her down on the far bank, bowed, and continued walking. The younger monk was scandalized. Their vows included not touching women. For hours, as they walked, the younger monk fumed in silence. His mind churned with judgment and confusion. Finally, he could hold it in no longer. "Brother," he burst out. "How could you carry that woman? We are not to touch women." It was a violation. The older monk stopped and looked at his companion with gentle eyes. "My brother," he said. "I put the woman down hours ago, on the bank of the lake. Why are you still carrying her?" We smile, but how often do we carry our own mud? An insult from yesterday, a failure from last year, a worry about tomorrow. We pick them up and then refuse to set them down. We carry them for miles, for years, letting them churn our mental lake into a muddy turbulence. The Buddha's teaching on mindfulness is, at its heart, the practice of setting burdens down on the bank. You acknowledge them. You may even carry them across a necessary difficulty. But then, you must consciously put them down and walk on. Your perseverance is not in carrying an ever heavier load. It is in the constant, gentle discipline of noticing what you have picked up, and choosing, moment by moment, to set it down so you can walk with a lighter heart. The younger monk's perseverance was misdirected. He was persevering in clutching a problem. The older monk persevered in letting go, which is the harder, wiser task. Now, let us contemplate a different kind of perseverance, not the perseverance of pushing forward, but the perseverance of being still. In our rush to solve, to fix, to escape our pain, we often overlook the transformative power of simple, steadfast presence. Buddhism holds the practice of sitting, of zazen or silent meditation, not as passive withdrawal, but as the most profound form of courageous action. It is the act of turning toward the storm within and saying, "I will not run. I will sit with you until I understand your nature." I recall a winter in the mountains. A terrible ice storm had encased the monastery in a glittering, silent tomb. The wind had died, and the world was held in a breathtaking, brittle pause. I went to the meditation hall, where the only senior monk present was an elderly teacher named Lin. He was simply sitting, facing the frozen garden. I sat beside him, my own mind agitated by the disruption, worried about pipes freezing, paths becoming impassable. I fidgeted. I sighed. After a long while, he spoke without turning his head. "What is the storm doing now?" he asked. I looked out. "Nothing," I said. "It has stopped. Everything is just frozen." "Exactly," he whispered. "It is in its being phase. It is not doing storm anymore. It is being ice. Being stillness. This is its most powerful state. Before, it was changing the world with wind and rain. Now, it is changing the world with silence and light. Which influence is deeper?" I had no answer. I only watched. And as I watched, I saw a crow land on a branch sheathed in ice. The branch, under the new weight, bent slowly, gracefully, and a cascade of diamond ice crystals fell with a soft, musical shatter. The sun, emerging weakly, set the whole scene ablaze with reflected light. The storm, in its active phase, had been chaotic and destructive. But in its being phase, as stillness, as ice, it had created a world of surreal beauty and profound quiet that revealed things I had never noticed. The intricate architecture of a weed, the perfect curve of a buried leaf, the incredible strength of a pine needle holding a sleeve of ice. The storm's work was not over when the wind stopped. Its most important work was just beginning. Our difficult times are like this. The active crisis, the loss, the shock, the frantic scramble, eventually passes. Then we enter the being phase. The freeze. The numbness, the stillness that feels like stagnation. We think, I should be moving by now. I should be doing something. And we break the ice prematurely, only to find mud underneath. But what if this stillness is not the problem? What if it is the necessary phase where everything is rearranging itself under a new, transformative light? Buddhism teaches that wisdom, prajna, often comes not from more thinking, but from this deep, patient being. Your perseverance in this phase is not about melting the ice with frantic heat. It is about having the courage to sit within the frozen landscape of your grief or uncertainty, and to look, with gentle attention, at the unexpected beauty and strength it reveals. The branch must bend under the weight of the ice to shed it. You too may need to bend, to feel the weight, to be still, until the sun of your own understanding rises and releases you, transformed. This understanding is not intellectual. It is felt in the body. Let me tell you a story about a potter and a cracked vase. A master potter was known for his perfect vases. They were symmetrical, flawless, and fetched high prices. In his studio, he had an apprentice who was all enthusiasm but little patience. The apprentice would spin the wheel too fast, force the clay into shape, and rush the firing. His vases were often lopsided or cracked. One day, after another of his creations cracked in the kiln, the apprentice despaired. "I am useless. I try and try, but I only make broken things." The master potter said nothing. He picked up the apprentice's latest cracked vase. It had a beautiful shape, but a hairline fracture ran from rim to base. Instead of discarding it, the master took it to his workbench. He mixed a special lacquer with powdered gold. With infinite care, he filled the crack with this golden resin. When it dried, he polished it. The crack was not hidden. It was illuminated. It ran through the vase like a river of lightning, a bold, beautiful scar of gold against the dark clay. He then placed it on the shelf beside his own perfect vases. In days, a collector came and saw it. He ignored the flawless vases and went straight to the repaired one. "This," he said, his voice full of awe. "This has a story. This has lived. This is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen." He paid a sum that stunned the apprentice. The master looked at his young student. "You thought perseverance meant making a vase that never cracks. That is the perseverance of fear. True perseverance," he said, pointing to the golden seam, "is the courage to take what has broken and repair it with gold. The Japanese call this kintsugi. In Buddhism, we call this the understanding of dukkha and its cessation. The crack is the suffering. The gold is your mindful, compassionate awareness that heals it. The vase is not weaker at the crack. It is stronger, more valuable, and more beautiful there, because that is where the light enters and is held. Do not aim for a life without cracks. Aim for a soul that knows how to mend them with gold. Your cracks, your failures, your heartbreaks, your mistakes, are not evidence that you have failed at perseverance. They are the very invitations for the highest form of perseverance, the gentle, artful work of integration. You are not the apprentice crying over broken clay. You are the artist who can learn to mix the gold. The Buddha's path is one of transformation, not of rejection. Nothing is thrown away. Everything, even your pain, can become material for the creation of wisdom. But where do we find this golden lacquer of awareness? It is found in the most ordinary of places. It is found in what Buddhism calls mindfulness of daily life. Let me share a very simple, personal practice. When I was a novice, the head monk gave me the task of sweeping the long stone path from the gate to the temple door. It was a tedious chore. Leaves, dust, pollen, it was never-ending. I would sweep with irritation, thinking of the meditation I was missing, the scriptures I could be reading. My sweeping was frantic, harsh, leaving clouds of dust in the air. One day, the monk watched me. He said, "You are not sweeping the path. You are fighting the dirt. Let me show you. He took the broom. His movements were slow, circular, deliberate. He did not attack the leaves, he gathered them. He was fully present in the arc of the broom, the sound of bristles on stone, the pile growing. Each sweep, he said, is a breath. The path is your mind. The leaves are your thoughts. You do not fight them. You do not begrudge them. You simply, with kindness, gather them and let them go. The goal is not a perfectly empty path. The goal is the mindful sweeping itself. A clear path is simply the natural result. That day, sweeping became my first true meditation. It taught me that perseverance is not a grand, dramatic battle against a giant enemy. It is in the mindful completion of the small, necessary task directly in front of you. Are you overwhelmed by the future? Sweep this minute. Are you haunted by the past? Gather the leaves of this single breath. The golden repair of your spirit happens not in a monumental moment of insight, but in 10,000 moments of utterly ordinary, fully attended care. You sweep your path. You wash your bowl. You breathe. And with each mindful action, you are mixing the lacquer and filling a crack you may not even see. This patient, granular attention changes our relationship with time itself. We believe we need to persevere until something happens. Until we get the job, until the pain eases, until we find love. We see perseverance as a means to an end. But what if perseverance itself is the end? What if the faithful, kind-hearted continuation is the very point of our spiritual practice? A flower does not persevere through being a bud in order to bloom. The persevering, the slow unfurling, is the blooming. You are not a human becoming peaceful. In each moment you choose a peaceful action, a peaceful thought, you are peace, blossoming in time. Let us now turn our attention upward, to the sky. Often, when we are in the depths of our struggle, we forget to look up. We become like miners trapped in a narrow tunnel, seeing only the dark walls pressing in, feeling only the weight of the mountain above. Buddhism encourages us to remember the sky. For even the deepest mine has a shaft that leads to the open air. Perseverance is not just about enduring the darkness of the tunnel. It is about remembering the direction of the light and continuing to dig, not deeper into the rock, but upward, toward the surface. I will tell you a story about a kite and a child. In a village on a great plain, a little boy was given a beautiful, brightly colored kite. He ran into the field, let out the string, and the kite soared. It danced on the wind, a speck of joy against the vast blue. But then, a strong and contrary gust caught it. The string snapped. The boy watched in horror as his kite, instead of flying free, began to tumble and fall. It landed, torn and muddy, in a distant thicket of thorns. The boy was heartbroken. He saw only the loss, the ruin of his beautiful thing. His grandfather, seeing his tears, took him by the hand. They walked to the thicket. The kite was indeed tangled, its paper ripped, its sticks broken. It's destroyed, the boy wept. Perhaps, said the grandfather. But let us see what we can save. Gently, they extracted the kite from the thorns. Back home, the grandfather laid it on the table. He did not focus on the tears. He pointed to the central spine, the long, straight stick that ran down the middle. This is unbroken, he said. This is strong. He showed the boy how to carefully glue the torn paper, how to bind the broken cross stick with a splint and twine. They worked slowly, with great care. When they were done, the kite was no longer pristine. It had scars, patches, and lines of repair. But it was whole. They took it back to the field. This time, the grandfather tied the string himself, with a special, stronger knot. The kite flew again. And as it flew, the patches and repairs were invisible from below. All that could be seen was its shape against the sky, flying perhaps even more sturdily than before, because its weak points had been reinforced. The broken kite is your spirit in hard times. The snapping string is the sudden loss or failure. The thorns are the painful circumstances that catch you. It is natural to see only the damage, to believe the flying days are over. But the Buddha within you, the wise grandfather, says, let us see what we can save. The unbroken spine is your core intention, your innate goodness, your Buddha nature. That is never destroyed. The repairs are the practices of mindfulness, compassion, and ethical living. They are the glue and the splints. The new, stronger knot is the wisdom you tie between your heart and your actions, so that when the next gust comes, and it will, the connection holds. Your perseverance is this gentle, patient repair work. You are not just waiting for the wind to change. You are actively restoring your ability to fly, knowing that the scars, when seen from the perspective of the sky, are merely part of a unique and resilient design. But what of the wind itself? We often see it as the enemy, the force that breaks our string. Buddhism teaches us to see differently. The wind is not personal. It is not out to get you. It is simply the nature of the atmosphere, it moves. Our problem is not the wind, but our attachment to a kite that cannot withstand a gust, or a string that is too weak. The teachings of the Buddha are not a promise of calm weather. They are instructions for building a more resilient kite and tying a better knot. They are the wisdom to know when to let out more string and when to reel it in. The wind of change, of loss, of challenge, is not a mistake in the universe. It is the universe. Your spiritual work is to learn its ways and to adapt your flight accordingly. This adaptation requires a profound trust in the process, trust in your own capacity to heal, trust that the sky still exists even when you are in the thorns. Let me share a story about a seed and a stone. A tiny seed from a fig tree landed in a crevice on a high, dry cliff face. Below was a barren landscape of rock and scree. The seed had very little soil, just a dusting of wind-blown dirt. It began to sprout, sending a tender, pale root down into the crack. Almost immediately, the root met an obstacle, a hard, impenetrable stone blocking its path to the deeper, unseen earth. The young seedling had a choice. It could give up, declaring its place inhospitable. Or it could persevere. It did not have the strength to break the stone. So it did something else. It changed its own nature. The very tip of the root, sensing the obstacle, secreted a mild acid. Day after day, week after week, the root pressed gently against the stone, not with force, but with a persistent, chemical patience. It softened the stone, molecule by molecule. And it did something more, it grew around the stone. It embraced the obstacle, shaping itself to its contours. Years later, a traveler climbing the cliff would see a magnificent fig tree growing from what seemed like solid rock. Its roots, now thick and gnarled, could be seen gripping the stone like a hand, having completely incorporated it into their structure. The stone was no longer a barrier, it was the tree's anchor, the reason it could stand firm against the mountain gales. You are that seed. The stone is your obstacle, your illness, your debt, your trauma, your fear. The wisdom of Buddhism is the secretion of patient, persistent awareness. You cannot blast through this stone with rage or willpower. But you can soften its hold on you with the gentle acid of mindful observation. You can grow around it, shaping your life and character in response to its presence. And in time, what seemed like your prison can become your most visible source of strength, the very thing that defines your unique, unshakable stance in the world. The stone does not disappear. It becomes part of your story, the anchor for your growth. Your perseverance is not about removing the stone, but about learning the slow, intelligent art of integration. This integration is the work of a lifetime, and it is done in community. We do not heal in isolation. The Buddha established the Sangha, the spiritual community, for this reason. We are like trees in a forest. Underground, connected by a vast, fungal network, they share nutrients. A strong tree will send sugars to a struggling seedling. A tree attacked by pests can send chemical signals through the network to warn its neighbors. They do not survive as lonely individuals, they survive as an interconnected wood. I remember a time of deep personal doubt in the monastery. I felt I was making no progress, that my meditation was shallow, my understanding feeble. I kept this to myself, wrapped in a cloak of silent shame. One evening, an older nun, whom I had barely spoken to, placed a single wild orchid in a small vase by my door. No note. Just a delicate, purple blossom on a long stem. It was so unexpected, so gratuitously kind. It did not solve my problems. But it was a signal sent through the invisible network of our shared humanity. It said, I see you. You are part of this forest. You are not alone. That single, wordless gesture did more to restore my perseverance than any lecture could have. It reminded me that my struggle was not a private failure, but a human experience, witnessed and held by a consciousness greater than my own lonely mind. Your Sangha may not be robed monastics. It may be a friend, a support group, a kind stranger online, or even the authors of books that speak to your soul. Your perseverance is supported when you allow yourself to both send and receive these subtle nutrients, a word of encouragement, a silent presence, a shared burden. Do not be the proud tree that tries to survive a drought alone. Send your roots into the network of kindness. And when you have sugar to spare, send it out. This is the compassionate aspect of perseverance. We keep going, not just for ourselves, but because we are nodes in a net of mutual care. Your continued effort is a gift to the whole. Let us now journey inward, to a place often overlooked in our striving, the domain of surrender. In the West, we often confuse surrender with defeat. In Buddhism, wise surrender is an advanced form of perseverance. It is the perseverance of the heart to open, even when every instinct says to clench shut. It is not giving up on the journey, it is giving up your rigid map for the territory of what actually is. Imagine a sailor on a vast ocean. He has a chart and a determined course to a distant island. A great fog descends, so thick he cannot see the bow of his own boat. The compass spins. The stars are hidden. He clings to his chart, insisting he must go this way, at this speed. He panics, exhausting himself by rowing against unseen currents, terrified of rocks he cannot see. This is perseverance as stubbornness. Another sailor finds herself in the same fog. After a moment of fear, she does something radical. She stops. She stows her oars. She secures her boat so it will drift safely. She cannot control the fog, the currents, or the hidden rocks. But she can control her relationship to them. She sits in the center of her small craft. She listens. She feels the subtle lift and fall of the swell. She notices the direction of the breeze on her cheek. She becomes exquisitely attuned to the present moment, not as an enemy, but as her only true guide. She is not lost, she is precisely where she is. She understands that to move blindly is far more dangerous than to be still and attentive. She surrenders her planned course, but she does not surrender her presence or her ultimate intention to reach land. She perseveres in her deep listening, her radical acceptance. When a slight thinning in the fog reveals a glimpse of a seabird's flight, a sign of land, she then picks up her oars and moves, not according to the old map, but according to the new, immediate information the moment has given her. The Buddha taught the concept of upekkha, equanimity. It is this calm, composed surrender to the reality of the present, free from the push of craving and the pull of aversion. It is the sailor sitting in the fog, at peace with not knowing, yet utterly alert. Your fog is your uncertainty, about your health, your relationship, your purpose. Your chart is your expectation of how life should go. Perseverance, in such times, is not about rowing harder into the murk. It is the immense courage to stop, to still the frantic activity of your worrying mind, and to simply be present with the lift and fall of your own breath. In that quiet, attentive space, intuition, like the sighting of a bird, can arise. Guidance comes not from forcing, but from allowing the reality of the situation to reveal its next, natural step. You surrender the illusion of control to gain the power of profound attunement. This surrender is intimately tied to the Buddhist teaching of anatta, or not self. We suffer because we believe in a solid, separate me that must control everything, that must be protected, that must achieve specific outcomes to be worthy. We say, my life is ruined, I am a failure. This I is like the sailor white-knuckling the oars, terrified of the fog. But what if that I is more like the fog itself, temporary, insubstantial, ever-changing? What if you are not the sailor, but the entire scene, the boat, the fog, the ocean, the distant bird? This is not a poetic metaphor, but a direct pointing to experience. In deep meditation, the sense of a separate, struggling self softens. You realize you are the awareness in which all of it, the pain, the fear, the hope, arises and passes away. This is the ultimate surrender. To cease identifying as the one who is struggling, and to rest as the spacious, compassionate awareness that holds the struggle. From that place, action can arise that is wise, compassionate, and effortless, like the sailor moving when the bird appears. Your perseverance becomes the perseverance of awareness itself, which never tires, never doubts, and is never harmed. Let me illustrate with a story about a weaver and a tangled thread. A master weaver was creating a magnificent tapestry. The pattern was complex, a story of mountains and rivers in silks of many colors. One day, her apprentice, while working on a section, made a mistake. A single thread of deep blue was pulled out of sequence, creating a knot and a visible flaw in what should have been a smooth river. The apprentice was horrified. He tried to fix it by pulling the thread tight, which only made the knot smaller and harder. He tried to ignore it and weave over it, but the bump showed. Finally, in frustration, he took a pair of shears and was about to cut the thread, to remove the flawed section entirely, which would have unraveled a great portion of the tapestry. The master weaver gently stayed his hand. "Do not cut," she said. "The thread is not the enemy. The knot is not a mistake. It is information." She had him put down the shears. She then showed him how to stop weaving. To lay down the shuttle. To gently, with infinite patience, work the knot loose with a fine needle. It took a long time. The knot did not disappear, but it was loosened enough to be integrated back into the weave. Then, she did something beautiful. She changed the pattern slightly. She used the now loosened blue thread to create a small, unexpected flower on the riverbank, right at the spot of the former knot. The flaw was transformed into a unique, deliberate detail that made the tapestry more interesting, more alive, more real than the perfect, rigid original pattern. You are the weaver. The tangled thread is your problem, your addiction, your anger, your grief. Your first impulse is to pull harder, force a solution, ignore it, repress it, or cut it out, numb yourself, run away. The Buddha's way is the master weaver's way: stop. Put down the shuttle of frantic activity. Pick up the fine needle of mindful attention. Work with the knot. Not to annihilate it, but to understand it, to loosen its grip. And then, have the creative courage to incorporate its essence into the larger pattern of your life. Your addiction becomes your understanding of compulsion and the foundation for your compassion for others. Your anger becomes the fuel for clear, righteous action. Your grief becomes the deep soil for empathy. The knot does not ruin the tapestry. It becomes the seed of its most unique beauty. Your perseverance is this patient, creative unknotting and reweaving. This work cannot be done in a state of self-hatred. It requires metta, loving kindness, starting with oneself. You cannot untangle a knot while cursing the thread. Imagine trying to comfort a sobbing child while shouting at them to be quiet. It only tightens the knot. You must speak to your own pained, tangled parts with the voice you would use for that child: I see you. You are in pain. It is hard. I am here with you. This is not weakness. This is the most potent strength there is. It is the strength of a mother who can lift a car off her child, not from muscular power, but from the unfathomable power of connected, selfless love. Direct that love inward. Your scared, angry, confused self is that child under the car. Your loving awareness is the mother. Perseverance is the act of holding that space of compassionate presence, moment after moment, until the weight begins to shift. Finally, remember that this journey of perseverance and surrender is cyclical, not linear. We do not achieve a state of perfect, struggle-free perseverance. We move through seasons. There is a story, not of the Buddha, but inspired by his understanding of nature. A man visited a famous garden known for its century-old wisteria vine. He went in spring, hoping to see the legendary cascades of purple blossoms. But he arrived on a rainy, gray day. The vine was a monstrous, gnarled tangle of brown wood, twisted and ugly, dripping with rain. It looked dead, oppressive. Disappointed, he left. The gardener at the gate saw his face. "You came at the wrong time," the gardener said softly. "You came in the season of the vine's perseverance." "Perseverance?" the man scoffed. "It looks dead." "Ah," said the gardener. "Now, it is holding on. It is conserving every drop of energy. The sap is deep within, unseen. Its work now is not to be beautiful, but to be strong. To endure the cold and the wet. Its beauty is in its endurance. Come back in 6 weeks." The man did. In 6 weeks, the sun was warm. The same gnarled wood was now the powerful, supporting architecture for a breathtaking waterfall of fragrant, lavender blooms. The perseverance of the gray season was the absolute prerequisite for the glory of this one. Without that tight, clenched, ugly holding on through the winter, the spring would have nothing to support. You will have winter vine days. Days where your perseverance looks and feels like a grim, ugly, joyless clenching. That is okay. That is a season. Do not judge your spiritual progress by how many blossoms you have on a given Tuesday in February. Judge it by the fact that you are still rooted, that the sap of your intention is still flowing, deep beneath the visible surface. Your job in that season is not to produce flowers. Your job is to hold on. To endure. To trust the cycle. Spring is not a theory in Buddhism, it is a law of nature. Anicca, impermanence, means no season lasts forever. The season of holding on will pass. And when it does, you will find that the very wood that felt so gnarled and dead was, all along, building the incredible strength required to hold up your joy. Let us talk about fear. It is the shadow that often stalks our perseverance, whispering that we are not enough, that we will fail, that the pain will last forever. In Buddhism, fear is not an enemy to be vanquished, but a messenger to be understood. It arises from avidya, ignorance. The fundamental misunderstanding of our true nature and the nature of reality. We fear because we believe we are a small, separate self in a hostile, unpredictable universe. The path of perseverance is, in part, the path of turning toward this fear with curiosity instead of contempt. Imagine walking through a dense forest at night. You hear a rustle in the bushes. Your heart pounds. Your mind instantly paints a picture of a predator, teeth bared. That is fear's first function, to alert you. But what if you stop, breathe, and shine your lantern toward the sound? More often than not, you see a small animal, or just the wind moving the leaves. The threat was not in the rustle, but in the story you instantly told about it. Your difficult times are that dark forest. The rustles are the uncertain news, the unpaid bill, the awkward silence. Fear shouts, "This is a monster." Perseverance, in the Buddhist sense, is the courage to shine the lantern of mindful awareness on it. To look directly at the actual facts, not the terrifying phantom your imagination has conjured. When you look, you often see something manageable, a task to be done, a conversation to be had, a feeling to be sat with. The monster dissolves in the light of your attention. This is not to say all fears are baseless. Some bushes do hold predators. But even then, The light of awareness shows you the true shape of the threat, allowing for a wise response instead of a blind panic. The Buddha taught the practice of vipassana, insight meditation, which is essentially the systematic shining of the lantern on every experience, to see it as it truly is, temporary, impersonal, and workable. I will tell you a story about a wall. A young man was given the task of whitewashing a long, high wall in the monastery courtyard. He was afraid of heights. The top of the wall seemed miles up. He stood at the bottom, brush in hand, paralyzed. The task felt impossible. His fear was a solid wall in front of the actual wall. An old monk walked by, picked up another brush and a bucket. Without a word, he dipped his brush and made a single, smooth, white stroke on the stone, right at the level of his own chest. He then handed the brush back to the young man and walked away. The young man looked at that single stroke. It was not the wall. It was just a patch of stone, now white. He could do that. He made a stroke next to it. Then another. He did not look up at the terrifying height. He kept his attention on the next small, chest-level patch of stone. Stroke by stroke, he moved along the ground, then used a ladder for the next level, always keeping his focus on the single, manageable patch directly in front of his brush. By the end of the day, the wall was finished. He had never conquered his fear of heights. He had simply stopped focusing on the terrifying hole and had persevered in attending to the possible part. Your great wall is your overwhelming situation. Fear tries to make you see only the sheer, impossible height. The wisdom of Buddhism is the old monk's silent demonstration: do not look at the wall. Look at the stroke. Your next breath is a stroke. Your next kind word to yourself is a stroke. The single, small action you can take right now is a stroke. Perseverance is the accumulation of these small, fearless strokes. The wall gets painted not by a heroic leap, but by a continuous, grounded movement of attention. Now, let us consider a deeper layer, the fear of failure itself. We often hesitate to persevere because we are terrified that our efforts will come to nothing, that we will be exposed as inadequate. This fear is rooted in the illusion of a permanent self that can be labeled a failure. The Buddha's teaching of anatta dismantles this. You are not a fixed entity that can be permanently succeeded or failed. You are a process, a river of changing moments. A failure is simply an outcome that did not match your hope. It is information about cause and effect, not a verdict on your soul. Think of a scientist in a lab. She runs an experiment. It does not produce the expected result. Does she weep, declare herself a terrible scientist, and abandon her work? No. She notes the data. She learns from it. She adjusts her hypothesis. The failed experiment is crucial to the ultimate discovery. Your life is your lab. Each effort, each failure, is data. Buddhism encourages you to be the serene scientist of your own experience, not the dramatic actor who thinks every scene is a final review of your worth. Perseverance is the commitment to keep experimenting, to keep learning from the data, knowing that the process itself is the discovery. The goal is not a specific result, but the deepening of understanding. We must now speak of a subtle but powerful force that can erode perseverance from the inside: resentment. When we struggle, it is easy to look outward and nurse a quiet bitterness. Why did this happen to me? It's not fair. They have it so easy. This resentment is like drinking poison and hoping the other person gets sick. It hardens the heart and drains the energy we need for our own journey. Buddhism addresses this directly through the practice of mudita, or sympathetic joy. Finding happiness in the happiness of others. This may seem counterintuitive when we are suffering, but it is a profound secret to unlocking perseverance. Imagine two neighbors who are both gardeners. The first gardener's plants are struggling, pale leaves, few blooms. The second gardener's plot next door is lush and bursting with color. The first gardener, consumed by envy, spends his days glaring over the fence, his resentment like an acid rain on his own soil. He neglects his watering, thinking, what's the use? His garden withers further. The second gardener, noticing his neighbor's struggle, one day brings over a basket of his extra vegetables and a bag of rich compost. Your soil might need this, he says kindly. The first gardener is shamed, then touched. He accepts the gift. He mixes the compost into his earth. He begins to tend his garden again, now inspired by the beauty next door rather than poisoned by it. His plants begin to recover. His perseverance was reignited not by focusing on his own lack, but by allowing the success of another to become a lesson and an inspiration, rather than a threat. Your neighbor's lush garden is anyone who seems to have what you want: stability, joy, peace, success. Resentment builds a fence and poisons your own plot. Mudita tears down the fence. It allows you to say, their beauty shows me what is possible. Their success proves that good soil and good care yield results. I can learn from this. This shifts your mindset from one of scarcity and competition to one of abundance and shared humanity. Your perseverance gains a friendly companion. You are no longer struggling alone against a world of people who have it better. You are part of a community where any person's victory is a testament to human potential, a potential that also resides in you. The Buddha taught that all beings wish to be happy. To rejoice in another's happiness aligns you with this universal truth and generates a positive, supportive energy that nourishes your own efforts. This leads us to consider the very source of our effort. We often push forward with a grinding, teeth-clenched energy that comes from ego and fear. This energy burns out. Buddhism speaks of a different source, the energy of inspiration, or chanda. This is a wholesome desire, an eager engagement that comes from seeing the value of the path itself. It is the difference between forcing yourself to walk on a blistered foot because you have to reach the destination, and walking with a light step because you are enchanted by the beauty of the forest path, the birdsong, the dappled light. The destination will be reached either way, but one journey depletes you, while the other nourishes you. I recall a young novice who was struggling with the long hours of scriptural study. He saw it as a dry, duty-bound chore. He was persevering through grim willpower and was miserable. An elder monk took him outside at dawn. He pointed to a spiderweb strung between two branches, jeweled with dew. "What do you see?" he asked. The novice saw a web. The monk said, "That spider did not build its web out of duty. It built it out of a joyful, innate inspiration. It is its nature to build, to create a thing of perfect functional beauty. The study of wisdom is not a chore to be completed. It is the web your mind is meant to build. Each sutra is a silken strand placed with intention. The dew of understanding will gather upon it. Find the spider's joy in the building itself. For the novice, this changed everything. His perseverance was transformed from a heavy burden into a creative, almost playful act. He began to look for the interconnected beauty of the teachings, to see his own mind as the loom. His energy became sustainable because it was fueled by inspiration, not obligation. When your efforts feel like a grind, ask yourself, can I find the spider's joy? Can I look for one small element of curiosity, of beauty, of intrinsic interest in the task itself? You are not just paying bills, you are weaving a thread of stability for your life. You are not just exercising, you are honoring the miraculous vehicle of your body. This subtle shift in perspective turns perseverance from a battle into a craft. It becomes sustainable for the long journey. Finally, we must acknowledge that all perseverance happens within the container of time. We want our efforts to bear fruit now. But nature operates on its own rhythms. A story tells of a man who planted a bamboo seed. He watered it diligently for a month. Nothing. 2 months. Nothing. A year. Still, just bare earth. Others told him to give up, that the seed was dead. But he had faith in the instructions he'd received. He continued to water the spot. In the second year, finally, a tiny green shoot broke the soil. And then, in a matter of just 6 weeks, the bamboo grew 90 feet tall. For years, all the growth had been happening invisibly, underground, building a massive, solid network of roots that could support such explosive height. If the man had given up in the first year, he would have never seen the bamboo. Your efforts are building roots. The blank earth phase, where you see no visible results, is not evidence of failure. It is the most critical phase. It is where faith meets action. Buddhist perseverance includes this faith in the unseen process, the trust that your consistent, good actions are creating an invisible infrastructure of karma and character that will, in its own season, support visible and astonishing growth. You are not just watering dirt. You are nurturing a hidden forest of potential. Keep watering. As we draw our long conversation to a close, let us gather all these threads, of bending, of listening, of repairing, of surrendering, of shining a light, of finding joy in the journey, of trusting the unseen growth, and weave them into a final, simple truth. The heart of Buddhist perseverance is not a grim holding on, but a vibrant, compassionate engagement with life exactly as it is. It is the understanding that you are not a stranger in a hostile world, but an integral part of a vast, intelligent, and dynamic process. Your very effort to continue is a sacred expression of that process. Think of a single candle flame in a great hall. The hall is dark, vast, and filled with shifting drafts. The flame flickers. It bends wildly to one side, threatened with extinction. It steadies. It is challenged from another direction. It seems so small against the immense darkness. This is your spirit in difficult times. Now, consider the nature of the flame. It does not fight the air. The air is its very breath. Without oxygen, it dies. The dance between flame and air is its life. The darkness is not its enemy. Darkness is the condition that makes its light meaningful and necessary. The flame's perseverance is not a stubborn refusal to be extinguished. It is its continuous, adaptive being. A constant, graceful negotiation of giving and taking, of yielding and standing tall, all the while performing its essential function, to cast light, to transform wax into warmth and illumination. You are that flame. Your challenges are the air, not to be defeated, but to be engaged with, for they bring you the very elements you need to burn. The darkness is not a void, but the space in which your unique light becomes visible and vital. Your perseverance is this dance. It is okay to flicker. It is okay to bend. The goal is not to become a rigid, static torch unmoved by any wind. The goal is to learn the dance so well that you can burn steadily through any draft, knowing that the wind itself is part of the burning. The Buddha's ultimate promise is not a life without wind. It is the unshakable peace, nibbana, that comes from understanding the nature of the flame, the air, and the darkness so completely that you are no longer afraid of any of them. You realize that the flame you thought was so fragile is, in its true nature, inseparable from the energy of the universe. It was never alone in the dark hall. So, as you move forward from this moment, carry with you the image of the patient gardener, the attentive sailor, the careful weaver, the joyful spider, the faithful waterer of bamboo. You are all of these. When you feel weak, remember the dandelion that bends. When you feel lost, remember to drop a stone and listen for the truth. When you feel broken, remember the gold that mends. Do not measure your progress by the distance traveled, but by the quality of your presence in each single step. The times may be bad. They have been bad before, and they will be again, for that is the way of waves upon the ocean. But you are not the wave, frantic and rising only to crash. You are the ocean itself, vast, deep, and containing within you the capacity for every wave, every calm, every storm, and every perfect, still reflection of the sky. Your perseverance is the ocean's nature, to hold, to move, to sustain all things within your boundless depth. Thank you for walking this path with me tonight in the monk's temple. If these stories and reflections have been a lamp for your path, consider subscribing. It is a simple way to ensure this quiet space remains open for you, whenever you need to return. Share your journey in the comments, your story is a part of our shared tapestry. Until next we meet, may you persevere with grace, with compassion, and with the unshakable knowledge that your light, however much it flickers, is essential to the world. Good night.